What if the last empty parking space is not a space at all, but a mouth waiting to close around your car? What if the level markers skip a number because something lives in it? What if a harmless pay station refunds more than money, and the exit you took last night is not there tonight? Some stories are too strange to be true, but what if they only become real after dark? Welcome back to my channel, Whispering Abyss. Tonight, I have something truly haunting for you. From elevators that arrive with no passengers to tickets that punch holes in memory, every story here is a mystery that tightens the longer you look at it. Listen with your doors locked. Keep your keys close. Which story creeped you out the most? Tell me in the comments, so I know I wasn't the only one who heard that echo. Story 1. Level B3 is missing an exit. There is no level B3. That is what the elevator said before it opened to a concrete mouth labeled B3 and exhaled a breath that smelled like lemon and old metal, which is how lies usually announce themselves, quietly and with a pleasant scent. Don't they? I stepped out because that is what you do when doors part like lips, even when the panel above them blinks a soft apology. I palmed my key fob, the little plastic prayer I keep for city nights, and the fluorescent hum around me vibrated off pitch by a hair, the way a bad violin almost ruins a song. Lines of white paint flaked under my shoes. Far off, a single chirp answered my button press, a bird too deep underground, late to the call. The air was colder than outside, winter trapped in a basement. I told myself this would be quick. Grab the prototype from the trunk, drive up, swipe out in the 12-minute validation window. If the gate camera recorded an overstay tonight, probation would become unemployment, and my sister wouldn't have a ride to the surgical intake she'd been pretending wasn't scaring her. People think the worst thing in a car park is a person with bad intentions. The worst thing is time, and who it belongs to when you stop paying attention. My car was supposed to be on B2. I remembered the spiral down, the bored yawn, the decision to keep going because every spot near the elevator was taken by bigger, shinier salaries. B3 had space and the elevator door right there. It had felt like a small victory. Now the white arrow for exit pointed left, then another pointed right, and a third, smaller one on the wall pointed straight back at the elevator like a joke. The pay station by the elevator lit up 12 o'clock, as if it knew me. I hadn't fed it anything yet. I walked left. That is always my first mistake in new places. I default to the left the way other people default to optimism. Concrete columns rose like blunt trees. Someone had drawn small chalk excess on some of them, low to the ground where you would miss them unless you were looking for something to kneel to. The lemon cleaner smell grew sharper near an exit sign where the arrow had been bolted on at an angle that would irritate anyone with a spirit level. The hum of the lights pitched up and then down in a slow sigh. The first chirp from my fob was met by another, half a beat late, from somewhere lower than ground should go. I told myself it was a second car responding to its owner. It's a city. We share air, song, signal. I hit the button again and listened. My chirp, then the answering chirp. The pay station display on the column beside me flashed 11:44 now, and I could not remember starting it. That detail slid into my pocket like a smooth stone. I did not like the wait. My car was not where I thought. The space number I snapped a photo of earlier read B3-237. The paint for 237 was fresh enough to sheen. The spot was empty, an oil rectangle like a missing tooth. The chalk mark on the nearby pillar was not an X, but an arrow pointing down toward the ramp that spiraled deeper. The exit arrow over my head pointed me away from the ramp. The puddle by my shoe, fed by a slow drip from a pipe, reflected the exit arrow upside down, which meant it pointed toward the ramp if you believe mirrors. Security, I said to the intercom box because it was there and because the red button promised help. I think I'm on the wrong level. Static, then a calm voice like an airline pilot. Follow the arrows, sir. Exit is 2 turns past blue section. I'm in gray, I said, and the arrows are confused. 2 turns past blue, the voice repeated, and clicked out with the polite finality of a voicemail that won't let you reply. Behind me, the elevator that promised no B3 dinged and open on to B3 again, empty as a throat. Sometimes in these stories, people tell you they felt watched. I felt listened to. The concrete caught my footsteps in cupped hands and passed them along. I went toward blue because the voice said so, because authority through a speaker is the oldest trap. The arrows led me around a curve that should have lifted me, but the ramp kept returning to the same mid-gray stripe and the same safety cone draped in an orange vest. I scoffed and walked past the cone to prove to myself no one was in it, which is a stupid sentence until the vest turned its empty shoulders toward me with the wind of my movement. My heart invented a face under it and then deleted it. The hum overhead hiccuped. The timer said 9:03. At the next turn, the stairwell door clicked when I pressed the bar. Inside smelled like dust and raincoats. I took the stairs up one flight because you always try up first and came out into B3 again. Same chalk X on the pillar, same small puddle. The exit arrow had moved a degree to the left. I stared until I realized that lemon cleaner had been wiped across the metal back, like someone's hand had twisted it recently. I knelt. In the puddle, the reflected arrow pointed toward the ramp again, into the throat of down. My fob chirped, and another chirp answered from the ramp with the soft cough of an engine ignition after it. My car was idling somewhere I couldn't see. You know that moment when the world gives you a choice and you pretend you didn't hear it? I could circle like a reasonable person and file a complaint tomorrow, or I could assume the world was broken in a way that required an unreasonable answer. The timer said 8:24. I went down. The ramp wall wore chalk arrows so faint I wouldn't have seen them without the angled light from the bad fluorescence. Every third pillar had a small X at ankle height. Ahead, the hum flattened into a single, almost pleasant note. A vent exhaled lemon and something darker, like hot plastic. When I turned the corner, my headlights reflected back, even though I hadn't turned them on. My car sat 3 rows down, lights bright, driver door ajar as if I had just gotten out. The validation ticket lay under the wiper, held by the blade, and it wasn't mine because the timestamp was 10 minutes from now. I didn't go to it. I went to the passenger side window and looked at the reflection because that was where truth had been hiding since I stepped onto B3. In the glass, I saw the exit arrow behind me, pointing the other way. In the glass, the chalk XS became little plus signs like additions, like you were supposed to add them up. In the glass, I saw myself put the ticket under the wiper and walk away, except I had not done that. And yet the reflection kept moving a second after I stopped, like all reflections when you're tired. When I pulled the door, the alarm didn't sound. My keys were in the ignition. That was the part that made the back of my neck itch. The intercom speaker by the elevator came alive, even from here, the voice stretched thin by the curve of the concrete. 2 turns past blue, it said, which is not an answer but a loop. The cone with the vest leaned inward, listening. The stairwell door I had come through shut with a gentle hydraulic patience and did not open again when I pushed it. The bar clicked. Nothing. When I hit it harder, the red alarm will sound sticker tasted like a dare. I pressed it. The siren started, a long, unbroken tone that didn't sound like help. Overhead, lights flickered once, twice. The hum broke and came back lower, like something bigger humming with it now. Immediate consequence. The siren summoned footsteps that did not echo the way mine did. They landed without reporting back, which means bare feet or very soft shoes. I could not see anyone because the ramp swallowed angles, but the air changed the way air does when another heat enters it. I got in the car and locked the doors and told myself that I was not 9 years old in a blanket fort. The delayed echo came through the speakers, the siren changing to a ring and then to a steady tone that slid down into the key. The fluorescent lights were already humming, and I knew if I kept driving the loop, I would never leave the song. Revelations usually arrive dressed as guesses. The exit arrows had lemon on them because someone had touched them. The intercom voice was a recording because it kept my words and gave me the same answer. The chalk was not vandalism, but breadcrumb. The puddles were maps if you believed in inverses. I had been following arrows in a place designed to punish followers. The orange vest on the cone made a silhouette at a distance because it wanted a story for me to walk into. When I got close, I felt foolish, which was the point. Embarrassed to fly, and the web tightens. I knelt by the puddle again and watched the arrow point into a painted dead end. On the wall, the words "No exit" had been rolled over in dull gray, but a ghost of white letters showed through like bones. In the water, the same wall showed a rectangular darkness the size of a maintenance door. I had to choose. The timer on the pay station said 2:11 now, though I was not near it. It ticked in my head. If I drove to the gate, the camera would log an overstay, and my job would end, and my sister would have to call a stranger to take her to a place where strangers cut you. If I left the car, I might make it out, but the prototype in the trunk would stay with the car, and the company would call it theft, and the version of me who keeps every promise would die in a small, petty way. The chirp answered me from nowhere. I left the keys in the ignition. I pulled the trunk lever and took the silvery case in both hands. I shut the door softly, like tucking a child in. 2 turns past blue. The intercom suggested cheerfully as I walked past it without looking. The painted dead end was just that, in the world where paint always tells the truth. In the puddle world, it opened when the fluorescent hum dipped and came back like a breath. I lined my steps up with the reflection, not the wall, and felt my shoulder brush cool metal where air should have been. The seam of a maintenance hatch found my fingers. It had no handle on this side. In the water, it had a bar. I looked silly, reaching to a place that wasn't there. Then the alarm in the stairwell speaker made a different note, one I remembered from a childhood smoke drill, and something inside the wall loosened. The hatch swung inward 2 inches. It should be impossible to smell lemon inside a wall, but I did. I slipped sideways through, scraping the case. On the other side, the hum was quieter, as if the lights were closer to good or farther from me. A narrow maintenance passage ran between levels, full of pipes that throbbed like patient animals. Chalk arrows in here did not bother with excess. They pointed relentlessly up and to the wrong way. The timer in my head said 1:03. I walked fast, then faster because behind me someone tested the hatch with a soft curiosity. The passage opened onto another slice of garage, and I stared, waiting to see B3, but the stencil on the pillar said B1. The exit lane gate was visible ahead, its white arm lowered, the camera eye black and bored. I walked toward it like a pilgrim, hugging the wall, carrying a square relic. When I reached the pay station by the gate, it came to life without me touching it, which would have made me laugh if I hadn't been busy breathing. 042, it said. The arm of the gate will rise for anything that looks like a car, not a person, and I had no car. The reader wanted a ticket. I had none because mine was under my own wiper on B3. I was not going to make it. The intercom beside the pay station blinked and spoke first, saving me from asking. 2 turns past blue, it said warmly, and for the first time I noticed the tiny speaker grill was stained lemon where fingers had pressed in hope. On the inside of the pay station cabinet, visible through the service gap, chalk dust had smeared a small plus sign. I turned around. In the reflection on the glass door of the lobby beyond the gate, I saw the exit arrows behind me pointing in, not out. I saw a man stride past in an orange vest and realized it was me. The vest slung over my shoulder to keep my hands free. I saw my car roll up to the gate without a driver, stop where I was standing, and the arm lift as if it recognized a regular. I'm not good at magic tricks, but I understand misdirection. The garage wanted me in the car to complete its loop, to feed it the shape it was hungriest for. The chalk wanted me to starve it. The only way out was to be a car without being one. The timer flipped to 0:21. I backed up until I stood square in the lane. I pressed the case against my chest until the corner left a bruise I would later mistake for something worse. I lifted my hands like headlights. I counted in my head with the hum. When my chirp came, a half beat later the answering chirp arrived from the ramp where my car had been waiting to be me. The gate arm rose. I did not think about why. I walked under it like a shadow slips under a door, and the camera made a soft click the way a polite throat clears at a funeral. The lobby glass slid open, and warm air from a night custodian's mop drifted out with a lemon wave that almost made me laugh. I kept walking. The intercom behind me blessed someone else with sunlight directions. Outside, a taxi idled at the curb, the driver looking at a phone, not at me. The city felt improbable. I hugged the case to my ribs and did not look back until I was in motion, Then I looked only to see the name of the garage again, so I could tell someone one day and be believed. The name had no vowels in the right places. The letters were the kind that look like other letters if you were tired. I decided to forget them. If you have ever escaped a place that insists you weren't there, you know that forgetting is the rope someone throws down the well afterward. At home, I set the prototype on the kitchen table, texted my boss a photograph, and told my sister I would be there at dawn. My hands shook and then stopped as if I had given them permission. I went to the window and pressed the fob without meaning to, the way you press your tongue to a chipped tooth. My chirp sounded small. From the street below, another chirp answered in my exact timing, but a breath late, like it had learned my rhythm instead of the other way around. I did not own a parking spot on my block. When I opened the door to the hall, the building's lights hummed off pitch and then corrected, just once, a tired violin finding the note. The sour lemon cleaner smell drifted under my apartment door from somewhere it didn't belong. I looked at the hinge and saw chalk dust where no chalk should be. My phone lit with a notification from the parking app, one barely use. Exit recorded for plate, it said. Exit recorded for plate. It said again, with the second time stamped 10 minutes after the first. 2 versions of me left, as far as the system could tell. I stood very still, listening like a garage listens. Down on the street, something heavy idled in a rhythm that fit the hum of my lights. My fob chirped again in my hand. The answering chirp came from outside my door, not the street, as if someone had learned how to be a car in the amount of space you give your shoes and your last thoughts before you sleep. Maybe that is not what it was. Maybe it was pipes cooling. Maybe it was a neighbor coming home very late, the good kind of tired. Some stories are too strange to be true. But what if the point is not true, only hungry? Now we move to the second story soon. But if you want more B3, look at those chalk marks again and tell me if I missed one. Story 2. The pay station whispers refunds. The pay station refunded my ticket before I touched it, as if it had been waiting with change cupped in a little metal hand. Coins clinked into the tray, warm like they remembered someone else's pocket. A whisper crawled from the speaker near my ear, a throat clearing too close to be mechanical. Refund approved, it said, and the display flickered from pay here to a timestamp that didn't exist yet. Cold metallic air bloomed with burnt plastic. My fingers stuck to the keypad where cleaner had smeared into syrup. I almost turned around, but nights make strange bargains, don't they? My name is Leah, and by 3 in the morning the hospital's fluorescent heartbeat has crept into mine. Night shifts teach you to keep moving or become furniture. I told myself to pay quickly, drive carefully, sleep at least 5 hours before the evening shift, and avoid becoming a headline about fatigue. The lot locks after midnight, so no validation slip means no exit. Punctuality equals employment. Employment equals rent. Rent equals my mother not worrying out loud. Basic math. The ticket I'd pulled from the machine at entry sat in my jacket pocket, crisp and clean. The machine gave me another anyway. Why? 2 crumpled tickets tumbled from the printer like little white tongues. One had my license plate. One didn't. The speaker whispered refund approved, again, softer, as if it were embarrassed about being heard. The display glitched, numbers swimming backward, time running in reverse until it settled on 5:41 a.m. That would be sunrise, or my exit time if I didn't crash. My thumbs skated over sticky residue, tacky with someone else's impatience. Above the machine, a dark camera dome watched, my reflection small and slow in it. I tried to remember when I last slept without thinking on lag. I looked over my shoulder for the guard. Footsteps? They were always there at this hour, the second-hand security contractors with thermoses and slow nods. I heard Saul's on concrete approach and stopped behind a pillar, the way people pause to be polite. Hello. I called, try not to sound like I needed saving. The steps resumed, then repeated again with the same little scuff at the end. A loop on a speaker, not a person. I realized, the hairs on my arm rising like tiny antennae. The machine coughed out another ticket, edges hot. Refund approved. It breathed, like a secret finally told to the wrong ear. I slid my Real ticket toward the slot. The pay station inhaled, hungry. The ticket paused at the lip as if testing the air, then vanished with a swallowing sound too wet for electronics. The display offered 2 buttons: pay in time or pay in memory. My laugh came out sharp. Someone was messing with the firmware, I thought, some bored tech with a Halloween streak. I pressed pay in time because there are only so many things you can joke about at 3 a.m. The screen blinked, flickered, and printed a slip marked refund, though I hadn't paid yet. How? Burnt plastic thickened like a storm cloud. The camera dome jittered, freeze-framed, and when it caught up, it showed me lifting my hand before I had moved. A 10-second delay? Maybe. The coin return rattled, as if something alive had gotten stuck and wanted out. My finger hovered. From deep inside the speaker, muffled child laughter bubbled up, the sound misaligned with the cold air, as if recorded in a warmer room. It made the metal around my ears feel colder. Refund approved, the whisper said again, and my badge lanyard tugged as if pulled by a small hand. I wore the badge on a retractable reel, a little yo-yo of identity. The cord unspooled without my help, the plastic square of my face gliding toward the card reader. I snatched it back, heartbeat tap dancing against my ribs. The display flickered to a new offer: validate stay or validate self. Behind those words, the timestamp slid backward, numbers shedding minutes like scales. The printer chattered and spat another ticket, this one with my plate number, but a date 3 days ago. I had not parked then. The speaker leaned so close to my ear it tickled. "Leah," it whispered. "Hearing my name is ordinary, but not when the air has no mouth." Refund approved. Something clinked into the coin return. I pressed the metal paddle and cupped my hand. Out slid a hospital ID badge that matched mine exactly. Same photo, same tired smile, same slight tilt of my head. I checked my lanyard, checked the one in my palm, checked my lanyard again. Both were real, cool plastic warming under skin. The camera dome showed me standing still, then showed me twitch, then caught up. Refund approved, the speaker said patiently, like an adult coaxing. Why me? Because I was tired enough to believe, perhaps. Because machines learn who lingers. Or because I had exact change in grief, and something wanted to make an exchange. I slid the stranger badge, which was my badge, toward the slot. The reader took it all the way in, not like a tap, but like feeding paper to a shredder. Refund approved. The printer chattered as if gossiping, letters stuttering into words I didn't want to read. My street name, my apartment number, the numbers of nights I had clocked out and then cried quietly at the red lights. The display asked, which, and offered 3 buttons that weren't there yesterday. Hours owed, miles driven, promises broken. I pressed the metal frame instead. The screen flickered to a security camera view of the lot, my car under sodium vapor light, looking tired too. The gate arm slept low. The exit lane reader blinked like a slow eye. I could walk away. I could call a friend. I could sleep on the back seat until sunrise made everything reasonable. Behind me, the footsteps loop repeated, closer, then farther, like a tide. The burnt plastic smell deepened, sweet with something almost candy, like a toy left on a heater. Refund approved, the speaker said, amused, as if I'd nodded yes. I took out my phone to photograph everything, because that's what we do when reality tugs loose. The battery icon shivered from 30% to 0 in one hop. The screen died. The pay station's display brightened, hungry, like it had eaten the charge through the air. The camera dome stuttered again, lag growing to a full breath. It showed me looking up before I did, showed my mouth shape the word help before the sound reached me, then caught up with a slap. The coin return rattled once more. I pressed the paddle with a thumb that had learned fear and curiosity braided. The tray held quarters and a ring. Not mine. A simple band, scuffed, warm as if it had been on a finger recently. Inside, an inscription no jeweler would engrave for their own sake. We got our time back. My hands knew a story before my mind did. A picture of someone feeding moments to the slot and hoping love could be refunded like parking. The printer chattered, letters stitching my home address over and over until the paper tore. I didn't take the ring. Some objects want to be picked up like stray cats. They purr until your life smells like litter. Refund approved, the speaker sighed. What now? I pressed cancel. The machine laughed, a tangle of children's giggles woven into static, and returned to the two impossible buttons: pay in time or pay in memory. Behind the words, the timestamp unspooled to 6:10 a.m., then 6:30, then snapped to 4:12, as if guessing my future and getting bored. I imagined the gate refusing me at dawn, imagined the supervisor's email, imagined the little nod of pity from people who had slept more. I imagined, and the machine sniffed, pleased the way a dog sniffs a pocket that once held food. You know the feeling. It smells like lemon cleaner and loss, right? The exit lane reader did refuse me when I tried it. I walked there with my crumpled slips, my original ticket swallowed. The arm stayed down, as if resting. The red light blinked a polite no. I fed a refund slip. The reader spat it back like a cat with pill paste. I tried the other slip. No. The intercom by the gate delivered footsteps in a can, a guard approaching eternally. The camera above the lane showed my car gliding forward without me. It reached the line, paused, and then reversed out of frame. Lag or prediction? My scalp tightened anyway. The price arrived as a vibration in my pocket. My badge app pinged, then blinked out. The timekeeping software refreshed to avoid where my last time in should be. A deletion. No record of my shift beginning. An email seeded itself from HR. The subject line, starting with important and ending with please schedule. The pay station display popped a new message like a magician flourishing a dove. Lost time found. Apply refund? The buttons blurred. The burnt plastic stung my throat. My eyes watered. The speaker whispered my address again, syllables until the apartment number sounded like a lullaby. I leaned against cold metal and let the little square door in my chest open. Inside it was a shape like a bed. Sleep beckoned, heavy and moral. The machine, patient as a drip, waited for me to tip. We can give it back, it said, but we was mine and not mine. Refund approved. The camera dome flickered, showing me step closer before I did. The coin return clinked twice. Another badge slid out, photo burned almost white, name field smudged by fingers. I pressed my ear to the speaker screen because I am not always smart at 3 a.m. Who is? The footsteps were louder here, the loop better disguised, rubber on concrete with a human weight to it. Almost done. A voice called, male, warm, bending around the pillar with a patience that felt earned. Relief lifted my shoulders until I remembered how lag works. The voice repeated, same tone, same smile tucked inside it. The same pause before the question mark. The speaker played it like a song on repeat to make me want to sing along. In the camera dome, I watched my mouth smile before I did. I didn't smile. I pressed my badge toward the slot. Choice arrived like a forked bone catching my breath. Insert my hospital ID fully and let the machine take whatever it meant by memory, or abandon the car and walk through a district that naps with one eye open. The display offered a timer now, a patient countdown from 2 minutes, as if a kindly friend were reminding me the garage closes its eyes soon. I thought about the ring. I thought about the nights I'd driven home on fumes of caffeine and hallway fluorescence. I thought about a child giggling in a room I could not see. What would you do? I fed the badge. The machine accepted it as if sipping. The display brightened, washing my face on a glass like a window reflection. Timestamps draped across my cheeks backwards. Minutes and dates I recognized from shift reports, reversed like writing in a mirror. The printer rattled, unfurling a ribbon of paper that spelled my name, then subtracted letters until it spelled nothing, then added new letters until it spelled it differently with a different employee number. Refund processing. The speaker whispered in a voice that was almost mine. The burnt plastic smell rose, then thinned on a breath, like the curl of a receipt tearing, then dipped softer again, coaxing me. Every refund, it explained without saying it, had to come from somewhere. The pay station was a little bank. People fed hours in panic and pulled out smooth minutes with the edges sanded off. Those minutes lived in other people's days as small bruises. A nurse arrived late and didn't know why shame clung to her scrubs. A patient waited longer and couldn't name what was taken except warmth. My refund credits crawled upward to a number bigger than my week. The camera showed the gate arm lifting from my empty lane as if I sat there, even though I stood here. The machine wanted to settle accounts. Yes? To leave, I had to become a subtraction. If the system never recorded my shift, then nothing needed paying for and nothing could be docked. HR could not discipline a ghost. The display asked one last question without words. The way Knight asks whether you mean what you said at noon. Erase last entry? The timer slipped to 30 seconds. The burnt plastic stung like an insult you pretend not to hear. I imagine my empty bed receiving me at 4 like rain receives a roof. I pressed the glass. The camera dome blinked. The gate reader flashed green like it recognized me, which felt like a handshake I hadn't requested. The machine whirred as if pleased by my manners. My shift vanished on the little timekeeping screen. The pay station printed a validation that said exit now. No price, no barcode, just those 2 words and a timestamp that matched the future the display had shown earlier. The intercom by the gate woke. The footsteps loop advanced, rehearsed comfort wrapped in tin. I didn't take my badge back yet. I slid the exit now slip into the lane reader and watched the arm lift in a silence that made everything else louder. The camera dome over the lane showed my car move again, a gentle obedience. Who was driving? No one. That was the trick. The lot software let certain plates roll when certain flags were set, a kindness that machines extend to each other like favors at a poker table. My car advanced on its own because the gate thought it had seen me already. The printer chattered one last time and spat a receipt with tomorrow's date. The speaker hummed, satisfied, the burnt plastic fading to a plastic toy smell, the kind from childhood that warms in a sunlit window. I stood there with the case of my badge around my neck, empty now. I looked at the slot, realizing an emptiness had been refunded too, right? I walked home instead of driving, because something in the delay between camera and movement made me distrust the idea of motion. The city had washed its face. Delivery vans yawned. Birds tuned. My keys felt foreign. In the hallway outside my apartment, the faint scent of burnt plastic lingered like a headache that forgot to leave. Inside my pocket, paper crinkled. I didn't remember taking a refund slip, but one waited in my palm, wrinkled, stamped in red with refund, and beneath that my home address, and beneath that a date that hadn't happened yet. I placed it on the counter. Would it arrive? Morning brought daylight's confidence. I slept hard and woke harder, heart booting like a stubborn computer. At the hospital, no one asked why I was early. No one remembered me leaving late last night. In the break room, my friend Sam frowned at his phone, annoyed by a system outage that had eaten 20 minutes from his punch-in. Weird, he said, rubbing a ringless finger. Feels like I already did today. A child laughed faintly from a cart someone was pushing past the door, a recorded cheer for a bravery award. The printer at the nurse's station chattered, then slowed, then printed my name wrong, then printed it right. I tucked the slip back into my pocket and told myself to stop thinking in numbers. On the walk home after tonight's shift, I would throw it away, I swore. But passing the garage, sunlight making camera domes sleepy, the pay station cleared its throat. No one stood near it. It whispered refund approved softly, the way people test a baby's name to see if it fits. The coin tray clinked. Something rolled and waited. I didn't turn my head. I kept moving. Still, burnt plastic walked beside me like a friend, and behind, the printer chattered my name once, then less, then nothing, practicing forgetting. Story 3. Do not park in space 13. There was no number on the concrete where I eased my car to a stop, only a pale bruise of blackened sealant. Yet when I cut the engine and the fan wheezed down, the yellow 13 seeped up beneath me like ink through paper. It spread under the chassis as if the slab were remembering what it had been told to forget. Damp air licked the floor. Overhead, pipes counted drops with the patience of a metronome. The fluorescent buzz missed its note for a heartbeat, then returned a half step lower, like it had heard my name and decided to pretend otherwise. What had I parked on? My name is Mara, junior property manager, last week of probation, and the kind of tired that turns ads into threats. Tonight's task was an after-hours audit on this garage, a job you give someone who wants the bonus enough to say yes. If I verified a sensor fault before midnight, the contract would trigger. If not, I'd be back to job boards and another apology to my partner for a future that didn't start. I promised Anna I'd be home by 1:30 and quiet, even if I wasn't happy. Small promises aren't small when you've broken them twice. The space had been taped off at dusk, my log said, but the tape lay cut and coiled on the ground like a shed skin. I rolled forward anyway, because audits don't reward caution, only movement. The wheel's textured grip printed little squares on my palms. Drips above counted to 13, then restarted at 1, a rhythm that snagged thought. When I killed the headlights, an oil-slick ring showed around a rectangular black patch near my front left tire. It shivered like a bubble that never pops. Why would scorched concrete wear a halo? A cheap pine air freshener dangled from the mirror upside down because I'd flipped it earlier to stop it tapping the glass. When the engine died, it rolled slowly, as if listening, then steadied again, still inverted, as if that mattered to someone. I set my phone alarm for 45 minutes to cover the walk-through and the drive home. The pay station's counter by the elevator ticked minutes in green, 11, 12, then 14, skipping the 13 like superstition had hacked the firmware. The elevator fan sighed a sleepy no. My breath clouded faintly and carried a chemical tang I couldn't place. Lemon? Oil? Both? The vents exhaled once, as if the building had been holding its breath. I stepped out, and the doors locked themselves with a soft nod I hadn't authorized. The remote chirped back late, an echo from farther down the lane. In the dark camera dome over space 12, my reflection shook its head before I did. 13 seconds later, I copied it. I timed it without meaning to. The number carved a thin, cold groove through the air. I told myself cables lag and concrete lies, and I would invoice for it later. Still, it felt like I had parked in a sentence that wasn't finished yet, and something was waiting to write the period. The radio had been off, but when I leaned back in from my clipboard, it jumped to 101.3 and whispered a fuzz syllable that might have been stay. I popped the faceplate like it was 2005, and fear still came with detachable fronts. The whisper kept going from under the dash, softer now, as if embarrassed to be heard. The rear camera thumbnail on my phone showed taillights glowing like patient eyes. The live view stuttered. In the dome above my bay, a miniature me reacted before I moved, as if the future were buffering a few seconds ahead. Who was leading who? The elevator stayed still, but the button light pulsed like a slow vein. I checked the mirror again. The pine tree still hung upside down, green triangle pointing at the floor like an arrow that forgot the sky. My laugh came out thin. I wrote the time and watched my hand shake. 12:17. Somewhere below the paint, the garage decided I visited at 12:14, and before that at 12:01, and before that never. I crouched to look under the bumper. White chalk letters peered back, stubby and urgent. Don't park here. The lowercase n curled like a hook. If you've ever read your own handwriting in a place you haven't written yet, your stomach knows the feeling. It's the elevator drop before the elevator moves. I rubbed the chalk with my thumb and smeared the letters into powder. The whisper under the dash thickened. It shaped a vowel like a mouth testing a taste. The pine freshener trembled, then steadied. Overhead, the drips ticked 12, 13, 1. The camera dome showed me bending down again, heavier with intention, and adding a second line. Don't flip the pine. I was still standing. 13 seconds later, I moved and wrote what I had already seen. Did I just obey myself? Don't leave it upright, a soft voice said behind me, and I spun so fast the world smear-streaked. A man stood 3 bays down in layered coats the color of old coffee. His beard was tidy in a way that didn't match his shoes. He held a broken safety vest and a plastic scoop. When he shook the vest, road salt dusted the concrete in a careful line. Thieves flipped those little trees to mark a car, he said, nodding at my mirror. They come back later. Might want to park somewhere else. His eyes watched the ceiling like it could answer for what it had done. I manage this property, I said, because correction is a reflex when you're paid last. He nodded like he'd expected either answer. The intercom near the elevator crackled and delivered the end of a sentence to no one. All attendants on level 1-2. The grammar limped. He pointed at the black rectangle by my tire, the oily ring around it catching light like a halo in a bad painting. "Count the drips," he said. "Don't let 13 finish. Keep the pine wrong." Then he drifted toward the ramp with the courtesy people learn when the world stops saying their names. What did he know that I didn't? He moved with the hush of someone who knows where the shut-off valves live. My brain stamped red herring on his back anyway, because nervousness makes me unkind. The phone on my dash announced 42 minutes left. Anna's last text sat above it like a fragile glass. "Please be on time, even if you're quiet." I wanted to go home and be exactly that. The dome blinked and showed me ducking under my bumper again to rewrite what I had erased. In that small future, I added a third line I couldn't read yet. I stayed still, as if refusing to move might break the loop. 13 seconds later, by the cadence of the drops, my body complied with the film. I crouched, chalked the warning heavier, and wrote the second instruction, "Don't flip the pine." When I stood, the freshener swung once like a nod and settled inverted. The radio breathed "stay" again in lowercase, almost kind. The pay station coughed a paper slip and hopped from 12 to 14 on its display like a nervous tick. The elevator fan deepened. I told myself to focus on sensors, not ghost etiquette. The bucket of road salt in my trunk knocked once. Then again, from inside. It wasn't loud. It was polite, as if the thing inside wanted to talk more than break out. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. I listed trunk contents to stay sane. Road salt, vest, warning triangles, flares, binders, nothing that should knock. My dashboard clock glowed 1:13 though my phone insisted 12:31. I pressed unlock. All 4 doors answered with a cheerful no and relocked. In the dome, my reflected self reached for the mirror, then tucked the little tree upright. I hadn't moved yet. When I did, my hand obeyed the picture. Had I invited it? I popped the trunk. The bucket sat in the center like a prop. Under the top crust of salt hid a folded slip, the glossy paper of an automated citation. The photos show my car in space 13 yesterday at 1:13 a.m., plate clear, bumper scraped in a way mine wasn't. The black rectangle beneath the front tire was darker than now, like the picture had been taken during a burn. My spine cooled. I hadn't been here yesterday. The system thought I had. The radio whispered "stay" with a little smile, the kind that says you already agreed. Headlights slid into the lane. The second car, my car, turned with the patient entitlement of a returning resident and eased into space 13. Yellow paint swam up beneath it, as if greeting an old friend. Make and model were identical. The plate matched. Only one detail differed. Its pine air freshener hung upright, green arrow pointing down. The windshield darkened the way glass does when it becomes an eye. I watched myself watch myself, the dome showing a future 13 seconds ahead, the lane showing a present that didn't need my permission. Anna was at home, deciding whether to worry yet. The soft-voiced man had vanished, but his thin line of salt lay between my bumper and the lane. I could squeeze past the duplicate if I reversed hard, hugged the pillar, and accepted a new scar. The lease would scream. Company policy would take the scream and make it paperwork. My hand on the door felt the garage, listening through the metal. In the dome, future me stepped to the mirror, hesitated, and turned the pine upside down again. I stood there foolishly, fingers already moving toward the string. I flipped it upright instead, because tidiness masquerades as control. The radio brightened. "Stay." The drip cadence hit 13 and reset. The doors relocked, a mouth sealing underwater. The duplicate cabin went the kind of dark that eats glass. I reversed anyway, angles cruel, metal shivering, and scraped my door along the pillar. The sound was a zipper on a body bag, soft and final. The lease clause died in that inch. Shame arrived hot. The delayed echo would come later as an email with bullet points. In the dome, the future showed me pausing to hear a voice I hadn't heard yet. The help intercom cleared its throat. "All attendants on level 1-2, it lied. I put the car in park and breathed like the trunk thing had been me all along. For a beat, the camera showed the exit lane open, a pale rectangle like a promise, then nothing. I could leave the car, take the stairs, and explain tomorrow with an audit that didn't include sensor captures. I'd keep in his promise and maybe lose the bonus, maybe the job. The garage Wi-Fi portal popped up when I tried to email photos and asked for a 13-digit access code, which is not a thing and never has been. The system wanted me to speak its language. The intercom delivered my own hello back 13 seconds late, like the building was learning my vowels. The salt line had smudged where my tire kissed it during the scrape. I dragged the bucket closer and traced my finger along the rim, feeling where hands had gripped before. The oily ring glinted again, rainbow colors wobbling around the black patch. Up close it looked like an afterimage left by heat. Align the tires to the ring when the count resets, the man had hinted. Don't let 13 finish. What happens if it does? Drops counted near the drain again. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, a pause, then one like a starter pistol rewritten as a teardrop. I needed a rule that wasn't on a sign. The dome kept delivering 13-second spoilers I didn't want. I tilted my mirror and caught the pine tree, still upright because I obeyed civility, not warning. Maybe it worked only when wrong. Some protections bite only when you insult them. I reached up and turned the little tree upside down. The whisper under the dash hissed a word that might have been wait. The elevator fan softened like something listening far away. That was when a man appeared again from behind a pillar with a starch-white look that belonged to recognition, not fear. Not thieves, he said quietly. Not anymore. He sprinkled a thicker arc of salt behind my car and over the near edge of the black patch, hands shaking. Keep your front left on the ring when the count hits 1, not 13. If you can see yourself writing, don't read it. It sticks. His eyes said he had once and paid. I wanted to pay him for the compass. He shook his head. Don't thank me, he whispered. Just don't give a neat number. You believe strangers at night because your other choices are worse. I buckled in and turned the radio down, though the whisper lives under quiet. I counted the drip because counting was the only thing that let my hands move when they'd rather pray. 12, then the first drop like a starting pistol that also cried. I eased the wheel until my front left kissed the rainbow ring. Rubber met memory. In the dome, future me chalked a third line I couldn't make out. The duplicate car idled without headlights, a purr through glass. The gate far away listened with its arm lowered like a thinking eyelid. The help speaker repeated 1-2 and then, as if embarrassed, coughed 3. The brake pedal trembled under my foot like a small heart. I had to choose now. Abandon the car and be the kind of safe you can explain to HR, or keep the promise that fear wouldn't drive this audit. Choice pressure is a machine with 2 gears. It grinds until you pick one. I shifted to reverse and nudged against the painted arrows because every sign tonight had lied politely. The whisper in the dash began counting down in a child's voice, 13 to 1, backward. Would the exit want me or the other me? At 4, my headlights kissed a concrete dead end where the lane should have curled. In the rear view, a thin rectangle shimmered at the edge of glass. There and not there, an opening that only existed in retreat. The drip stuttered between 2 and one the way a heart misses a beat and then catches. Future me in the dome touched the pine as if telling me don't move now. I rolled the rear tires across the black patch exactly as the plink of one rang from the drain. The rainbow ring seemed to melt under rubber. The gate in the distance began to rise for a ghost. The duplicate engine climbed, impatient. For a breath, the number beneath my car washed out and left blank concrete. The rear view opening brightened like a grayscale sunrise. The corridor beyond it looked like every maintenance hall you forget on purpose. The radio fell quiet, whispers satisfied. I let the car coast through the knot door, tires humming on a ribbed steel plate, then onto smooth concrete. The fluorescent pitch steadied. The air lost its lemon chemical edge and smelled of dust. Behind me, in the dome that still insisted on future, my smaller self pressed chalk harder, furious at something I wouldn't know yet. The maintenance corridor merged with an ordinary ramp so bland it made me laugh. The kind of bland that means safety to tired people. I followed it to a lobby where a plastic yellow sign told a happier lie about caution and wet floors. I parked by a planter holding one brown fern doing its best. I took the clipboard, the maintenance logs, the photos that remained on my phone like good witnesses, and I walked out without the car because ownership felt optional for a night. The city's air whistled clean. I called Anna. "I'm on my way," I said, and meant it like a rescue. Home was 4 blocks and 1 river of headlights away. Anna opened the door before I knocked, the kind of welcome you don't deserve but get anyway. She looked at the upside-down pine, air freshener dangling from my keys where no pine belonged, and frowned the way you frown at glitter that traveled home. "Why is it like that?" she asked, gentle so the glitter wouldn't feel accused. My phone chirped. The car alarm on the app sang once, exactly as the kitchen clock clicked to 13 past, a syncopation that tickled my spine. I set the keys on the counter as if they might crawl. What followed me? An email arrived before sleep with the tone of a door locking. "Vehicle damage detected. The facility wrote, lease violation noted." Another notification logged my car as still occupied in space 13, accruing charges that did not debit. I forwarded the audit anyway, a spine of photos and numbers and a story no spreadsheet would hold. At 1:13, the app chirped again from an empty garage. A traffic cam digest arrived the next day with my car passing our block at 1:13, windows dark, pine upright. I had walked home. Anna smelled the faintest lemon in our hallway air. The kitchen clock paused, then kept time. What would you call it? Tonight, I'll set alarms? Story 4. The night shuttle follows no schedule. The shuttle drifted into the campus garage with no driver, doors sighing open like a big thing taking its first breath in hours. Fluorescence buzzed above us with that sickly yellow-white, diesel threading the cold air, and the PA spoke from an empty seat. Next stop, last stop, next stop, as if it couldn't decide which was true. The route placard over the windshield flickered through locations no student recognizes anymore, place names from old maps and dead brochures. Then it settled on my street. Express. It promised in block letters that felt like a dare. Why would a driverless bus know where I live? I could walk the 15 minutes home, but campus after 2 feels like a story that ends with a bad idea, and my mom didn't raise a headline. I had a 7 a.m. shift in the library, and if I was late again, my supervisor would stop using the word again. So I stepped in. The doors closed at my back with a hush that sounded like a secret being kept without my consent. My name slid out of the ticket printer before I touched anything, black letters on yellow paper. Evan, it said like a door with my face printed on it, who swipes into a ride that already knows them. The clock above the empty driver's chair was frozen at 3:33. It wasn't 3:33. My phone said 2:49 and counted like a good citizen. I sat in the middle where you can pretend to be ready for either exit, and the seat belt across the vinyl had a frayed edge that felt warm against my fingers, like someone had just been here and got up invisible. On the window, carved with a dull thing that took time and frustration, someone had scratched, "Ring bell only once." The PA agreed with itself, a soft loop. Next stop, last stop, next stop, as if I'd boarded the inside of a thought. When metal rumbles under you with nobody driving, you listen harder to little things. The squeak of a wheel on polished cement, the hiss of the door gaskets, the faint, recurring pop of a speaker testing if you're still here. The route map over the aisle hummed a backlight into street names from decades ago. Arlington Avenue, Laurel Grove, the return depot. My street shouldn't be on that list, but it was pale and sure. Express. Seat belts aren't usually warm. Tickets don't usually know your name. I tucked mine into my pocket anyway, like superstition had a pocket too. The shuttle slid forward without a lurch, a fish knowing the water. Garage pillars slipped past like slow, concrete metronomes. When we popped out into the night, the sodium lamps on campus made everything a little bruised. We didn't stop where we should have. It blew past the dorm loop and the student center like a polite car ignoring a stop sign nobody enforces. The PA cleared its throat. Next stop, return depot. It said cheerfully like it was giving me good news. The clock above the driver's seat sniffed at the idea of time and stayed 3:33. 2 other passengers sat in the front, the kind of late-night riders who stare at nothing in the way people stare at everything when they've given up on blinking. One was a guy in a denim jacket twisting a ring around his finger with mechanical patience, clicking it at the same notch over and over. The other was a woman hugging a backpack to her chest like a life jacket. They didn't breathe according to human climates. When the shuttle took the curve at the stadium, their heads tilted in the same angle, the same degree, like birds on a wire blown by one wind. I told myself that's how people are when they're tired. I didn't turn my head to look long, in case I caught a loop and couldn't set it down. The friendly one was a grad student type with a soft baseball cap you buy when you still hope about teams. He turned enough to catch me not looking and smiled the kind of smile you make for infants and scared dogs. "Late night," he said. Normal words, normal voice, except the PA spoke over him with "next stop, last stop, next stop," and his mouth kept moving under it, out of sync like lips in a movie with bad dubbing. "Where you headed?" he asked, but the hiss of the doors swallowed the last word even though the doors were closed. "My street's on the sign," I said, and immediately wished I hadn't. Something likes it when you tell it your name twice. He nodded, as if the conversation were a hallway he'd walked before. Then he turned back to the window and resumed small motions with his hand, like he'd been wound and set on a ledge. A beat later, I realized I knew his face. Not the person, the expression. It was the look you make 8 hours into studying when your body remembers you have one. I had seen that face earlier tonight. In a bathroom mirror, we passed the stop where the shuttle usually picks up staff in the overnight wing. The driverless seat was a posture, hands implied, on an imaginary wheel. The bell cord ran along the ceiling ahead of me, braided plastic slick with too many semesters. I waited for the PA to say my street, and when it didn't, I pulled the cord with a polite tug. The bell gave one ding like a relieved exhale. Accidentally, my hand bounced and tugged again. Ding ding. The metal all around us tightened like a mouth around sudden taste. The lights flickered. The grad student smiled without turning. The graffiti warning I hadn't taken seriously got very loud in my head. Everything went black at once. Not like a power failure that echoes through concrete, but like when the projector cuts during a childhood movie and you hear the "we're stopped too." The PA took a breath, so quiet I almost didn't hear the inhale. The clock above the driver's empty place blinked, ready to stop again at 3:33. The doors hissed like tires splashing into shallow water and slid open to reveal the campus garage where I'd boarded, except the bay numbers were mirrored and the vending machine had its guts on the wrong side, and the sign that usually says level 2 said level. I didn't know the alphabet could do that in public. I stood, and the shuttle hummed a question in the floor. When I stepped down on a wrong garage, the air smelled like hot dust. My phone had no bars like the idea of signal had left town. The time at the top corner sat at 3:33, and I couldn't swipe it in anything else. I walked across the bay, so I wouldn't panic sitting still. The automatic doors to the stairwell opened their glass mouths. On the other side was not a stairwell. It was the shuttle again, doors open as if they were practice lips. I was coming in through the exit now, the world politely ignoring my attempt to leave. I backed away, which is what animals do when the trap shows its teeth after the sugar. "Hey," I said to the grad student, to the air, to whatever. "I need to get home. Do you stop at Hawthorne and Fifth?" The grad student turned, his smile ready to roll like a screensaver, and I saw it map my face like a mask held to a light. He flickered at the edges the way heat blurs roof lines. When he answered, the sound came from everywhere. "Late night," he said, and the words warbled onto the PA and back again, as if the shuttle itself was trying on a voice. The ticket printer whirred and spit out a second rectangle. It wasn't a ticket. It was my actual student ID. The photo too honest, the plastic still warm. Across the barcode, stamped in red letters that wetly bled at the edges, was void. On the back, where the emergency number lies, someone had scratched "return accepted." The machine had taken something in the way machines do when you discover the fee too late. I slid the card in my wallet and it wasn't there, which is a trick I don't know how to do when I'm awake. I could have jumped out the far doors and taken my chances on the mirrored stairs, but the shuttle played an old route name with the same softness my grandmother used washing my hair when I was small, and I sat down again because comfort is the oldest trap. The frayed seat belt lay across my lap like a tired arm. It was warmer now. The PA rotated its trick. Next stop. Last stop. The words bumping each other like beads, starting a necklace and never finishing it. The clock above the driver's seat knew only one number, 3:33. The only time it trusts is the one that repeats. Where does Return Depot go? I asked the air. The grad student and the backpack hugger moved their heads to the left, right on cue, an inch like a choreographed prayer. The shuttle took a road I'd never seen under a stadium I thought I knew, and into streets that looked like mine if you rubbed them with sandpaper and put the signs back crooked. The lights outside went thin and tall, then short and fatter, like watching a city learn to age with speed-up footage. The windows showed storefronts I recognized, but names moved 2 doors down like people at a concert looking for their friends. Express doesn't mean fast, I realized. It means it skips. It skips distance by spending time I didn't get to agree to. When I stood again, the shuttle leaned away from my feet like a boat avoiding a rock. The bell cord lay above me, warning humming where it touched the air. I remembered the carved instruction. Ring once, only once. But wanting to go home is a clumsy animal. Fingers do what fear asks before you get to phrase it. I gripped the cord and closed my eyes, telling myself the word one. The way you tell yourself don't look down walking a narrow thing. I tugged. A single ding rippled through the metal, not cheerful now, but like a glass tapped at a memorial. The PA joined itself, soft, honest. Next stop, Evans stop. It didn't say my street. It said my name again, which tasted wrong on air. Still, the sign over the aisle scrolled home in a font that looked printed older. My street came into view the way old photos come into focus after a second in a chemical bath. We pulled up to my building, and it was my building but 30 years tired. Fresh paint turned to a chalked memory. Mailbox doors bent mouths. The entry buzzer panel had my last name among the buttons, grimly basic, and next to it in a parenthesis, a word people don't use for the living. Deceased. There's a moment when your spine thinks it's the only honest part of you. Mine kraulet. I stood anyway because this night had insisted on nouns being verbs. The doors puffed open with politeness they hadn't earned. If I stepped out now, who would step in? The grad student watched the window the way a loop watches its end. The backpack hugger had a streak of static in her hair that had been a color a moment before. I looked down at the ticket in my hand, my name warm on it like a palm print. Return Depot meant what all stores mean. No cash back. Store credit. You come back as someone the same shape and not you. I tore the ticket in half, clean, a sound that felt wrong for paper. The shuttle flinched very softly, the way a person does when you say a name they haven't heard in years. The doors stayed open. The PA lost its place and said, next, stop, last, and then swallowed the last word. The clock above the driver's seat hiccuped off 3:33 and tried 3:34 in a toddler handwriting, then snapped back, offended at itself. In that little stutter, I stepped down. Cold air wrapped my ankles the way a cat brushes without admitting it meant to. At the buzzer panel, I held my breath and pressed my name. The tone it made was the sound of an elevator caught between floors. No one answered because nobody lives in a unit marked like that. When I turned to look back, the shuttle's windows reflected the street, not me, as if it couldn't keep me in frame. Then, like a trick you can only do once, there was someone in my seat, a slouch I recognized from too many nights, hand on the bell cord like it had always been that hand. You can call it a double if you need to file it somewhere. You can call it a debt collector. I walked. The cold rinsed something out of my head and left me clean to shiver. I put my actual key in the actual door and it turned. Inside, my bed had the shape of me in it, as if I'd come home early and left myself sleeping. The phone alarm shrieked at 7 like it had lost a fight and then pretended it meant to. I didn't remember the walk between buzzer and blanket, but mornings sometimes don't ask for exact math if you show up. In my pocket, a curl of paper warmed the skin. Half a ticket, my name, and the perforation where future got cut. At work, my supervisor blinked at me like my timeline had indigestion. You missed yesterday, she said, meaning I had missed a 12-hour block I'd somehow slept through. My ID refused the barcode reader, and the librarian at the desk tried it 3 times out of politeness before giving me a paper guest pass like a Band-Aid for a missing limb. On the back of my ID where the emergency number lives, the scratch I remembered said return accepted, and then, lighter beneath it, another scratch I didn't remember making. Ring once. You already did. I told nobody, which didn't feel like comforting anyone. Sunset washed the city pink the next evening, and I told myself a shuttle was a dream that had the decency to leave a prop in my pocket. If this one got under your skin, tell me which part, the handprint or the clock. I'm curious which one keeps you awake. And that brings tonight's journey through the haunted veins of parking lots and garages to an end. 5 stories, 5 different rides you'll never quite look at the same way again. From levels that shouldn't exist, to machines whispering refunds, to cursed parking spaces, to shuttles that never follow time, and a valet system that logs more than just cars. Each tale is its own echo, but together they remind us that ordinary places, where we think we're safe, where we leave our guard down, can be the darkest traps of all. If you stayed with me through the entire night, thank you. I hope you listened with your doors locked, your mirrors steady, and your car keys close at hand. Which story unsettled you most? The missing exit, the whispering pay station, the space that wouldn't let go, the timeless shuttle, or Ticket 000? Drop your answer in the comments, because I want to know which one followed you home in your thoughts. Remember, fear doesn't need gore to creep into your veins. It just needs the ordinary, tilted a degree too far, repeated until it feels like it was always that way. That's where the real chills live. If you like tonight's stories, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Whispering Abyss, and share this with someone you think can handle the dark ride. And keep the bell on, because next time, you'll want to know when the doors open. Sleep lightly, keep your eyes on the exit signs, and never ignore the sound of a car engine idling where it shouldn't be. Until the next night, good luck finding your way out.